Hello and welcome to this episode of the Spiced In Podcast. My name is Jacob and I'm your host. Just to get a few things out of the way, this week I said I'd be talking about the Chewbacca miniseries comic book. And, well, I'm not going to do that this week. Sorry to jump this on everyone, but we're actually going to be talking about Dooku Jedi Lost. So you will have a spoiler warning at a certain point for that. Just to be a little behind the scenes on my production. For me to read and take my notes on a comic book takes about 3-ish hours for a whole trade paperback. So that takes quite a bit of chunk out of my day, or my week. And as I mentioned before, I have a puppy that kind of sucks up all my time. So instead, I figured I would go with an audio drama that is Dooku Jedi Lost. So we'll talk about that, in addition to a few other things going on this week for Star Wars. I mentioned in the last episode that Project Luminous is supposed to be announced this month. Unfortunately, that has not happened yet. So we'll probably either talk about that either next episode or the following, as January is coming to a close. In addition, I just wanted to plug that if all things go according to plan, I should be guest hosting on the Galaxy of Beers podcast. So the Galaxy of Beers podcast talks about a few things: Star Wars, beer, craft beer specifically, and the mobile game Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. If you've ever played Marvel Strike Force, it's a similar game to that. It's a game I've had since launch, I believe, and have been off and on for a long time. It came out, I think, 2015, 2017 maybe, somewhere in that ballpark. I've been playing it off and on, and I finally actually buckled down and got a little bit more serious. I mean, free to play, obviously, but got a little bit more serious about it a few months ago. So I've been, in contact with them. They're great guys. They're much more entertaining than I am. I can tell you that much for sure. But if everything goes according to plan, I should be guest hosting and taking a part of their podcast, which will be released, I imagine, Wednesday of this week. So I'll make sure to retweet and share everything, all their posts on social media. That way you can go find that and listen to a much more entertaining podcast than what you're listening to right now. I figured I would talk about Galaxy of Heroes, the mobile game. I realize that probably many people don't know it, but the basic detail is you collect and level up characters from all across the Star Wars saga, including some Legends characters from the Old Republic. You pit them against each other, and that's basically the grand overview. It's a mobile game, so it's incredibly grindy, but that's kind of what you expect, I guess, isn't it? Just a little update of what I've been doing lately. I recently got the legendary character Commander Luke Skywalker. That's pretty much Luke from Empire Strikes Back. He has this beigeish flight suit with his blue lightsaber. And he is a legendary character. There's a handful of those that you have to go through hoops to collect. So for this one, you had to 7-star, which is the max, whatever, it's a mobile game. You collect bits of a character. You collect 330 bits for a 7-star character, and you have to 7-star Stormtrooper Han Solo from the Death Star, Farm Boy Luke, Princess Leia, Old Man Ben Kenobi, and R2-D2 in order to get Luke. And in order to get R2-D2, you have to have a 7-star squad of Empire. So you see how this can become very tedious. So anyways, I got Commander Luke Skywalker, and the next character I'm working on trying to get is Jedi Training Rey, which is Rey from The Last Jedi. It's a very similar process to Luke Skywalker. You need to get BB-8, veteran Han Solo, veteran Chewbacca, Finn, and Scavenger Rey. So Rey on Jakku. And in order to get BB-8, you have to have a full 7-star squad of First Order troops. So I'm in that process right now, and hopefully I'll be finished within the next, month or two? Not a month, more than that, because I have a lot of work on my First Order to go, and the veterans, which take forever. So it'll be a while, a couple months probably, but that's what I'm doing in that game, and you'll hear me talk more about the Star Wars Galaxy Heroes beer and some other Star Wars stuff on that podcast, hopefully on Wednesday. Again, if you want to see where that is, follow me on Instagram or Twitter at SpicedInPod, and I'll make sure to share their stuff with you. In other news, I've also been watching more Clone Wars. It was a little slower. I was hoping to do all of Season 6 this past week since it's so short. I think I only watched about 6 episodes, but so far it's been really good. The whole, quick spoiler warning for the first half of Clone Wars Season 6. The whole arc with Fives was incredibly interesting, and I thought it was a little weird. I guess I never thought of the Kaminoans being so in on the job for, so to speak, for Order 66. But yeah, they were actually really sinister at the end of the day. I kind of thought it was something that was slipped in there on the down low, but they all seem to be aware of what was going on. Right now I'm in the middle of the arc with Clovis. I think that's really awesome to see Moon. It's something I never thought I'd really see in Star Wars in the visual medium. In addition, between the episodes of Season 6 and I'd say probably the last 4 or 5 episodes of Season 5, it's been really cool to see that slow fall of the Republic to start to resemble more of the Empire. And it makes it more reasonable to see how it could almost go from a flip of a switch from what we had in the previous movies. I will definitely be finished with Season 6 by next episode, and maybe I'll give you my thoughts on my brief thoughts on the last half of that season. Just a reminder that the Clone Wars Season 7 is launching early February. The first episode will be launching February 17th. Like I said last episode, that's a Monday. It's going to be rough with my release schedule because I'm not going to be able to pump out a podcast talking about it that day. And I'll probably have to end up being a week late on that news. But hopefully, like all the other Disney Plus shows, it will revert to a Friday release schedule just because it's so easy for me to, well, not so easy. It's much easier for me to do it over the weekend and talk about it. So I would be at least somewhat topical by the time we get released. So anyways, with that all out of the way, I think we're ready to hop into Dooku Jedi Lost. I'll give my kind of brief review, I guess, of it first, and then I'll give you your spoiler warning. Dooku Jedi Lost tells the tale of Count Dooku as a Jedi up to his fall. It's told through the lens of Asajj Ventress as she's on a job for him. She's looking through some old information, trying to learn more about him, and we get to see through her eyes what he grew up to be. I think it's an incredibly interesting way to tell a story. It's originally an audio drama, and that's how I consumed it. If you don't want to buy an audiobook, which I can understand, they are kind of expensive, you can buy, they do have a regular printed copy now you can buy, or you can do what I did and just sign up for the Audible trial and get your free audiobook. So, not a sponsor, but am willing to be sponsored. Hit me up, Audible. So it was around 6 hours, which it's a long time, but when I can listen to it at work or on my commute, it doesn't, it flies by pretty quickly. Especially because a lot of my podcasts are still kind of coming back into the swing of things off of the holiday, so it definitely filled some dead time for me there. But yeah, so I thought it was very good. It was very entertaining. My only real complaint is that if you're used to watching the Clone Wars, a lot of these voice actors, they're not the same ones as the Clone Wars, so it might take you out of it for a little bit. But I would say after an hour or so, it probably didn't really bother me as much. But at first, it kind of did throw me off. Anyways, I would definitely recommend it. Like I said, if you want to listen to it on the cheap or free, technically, I would sign up for that Audible trial. Just make sure you cancel it before the end of your 30 days. And let's just jump into spoilers. So if you do not want to have this spoiled for you, please tune out. And here we go. Dooku Jedi Lost, like I said, this is Asajj Ventress very shortly after she's come into Dooku's hands, I suppose. Remember, she was originally on Dathomir. She got bought out by like a bounty hunter who had her as a slave. The bounty hunter died and she was taken in by a Jedi and trained with him until he unfortunately passed. And from there, she went a little dark. She was kept on Ratatak, which is the planet she was on with all of her masters, I suppose, and eventually was taken from there by Dooku. So this is shortly after there. Dooku is on Sereno, the Count of Sereno. So this is shortly after she's come into his care. I don't know if I can say care, really, but you know what I mean. And he has a job for her. His sister is lost somewhere on Sereno, and he needs Asajj to track her down. So she's given a bunch of communications that they had when they were growing up, and is supposed to use that in order to kind of piece together a narrative and find her. So we see Dooku more or less tell the tale of him growing up as a Jedi. And like most Jedis, he was taken from a young age where he couldn't remember his homeworld, but he knew he was from Sereno. And it gives, at least when he's still a youngling and a Padawan, it has an incredibly Harry Potter vibe to it, I would say. Like, extremely Harry Potter vibe. Like, I think they kind of tried to lean into that a little bit. Early on in the story, it's when he's a youngling, before he even has a lightsaber and before he's assigned a master, they go to a sort of World's Fair on Sereno, and all the Jedi are there to do a demonstration, like a lightsaber kind of just fake duel demonstration for the galaxy to show off. And the Padawans were brought along. His best friend, actually, is Sifo Dyas. Yeah, that's Sifo Dyas, the one that actually made the order for the clone army. And they're just palling around, looking at all the exhibits and everything. When he eventually runs into a girl, he has to save her from some thugs. And when they talk to each other, she realizes that he has a Serenian name, and they go off to learn about their world. She takes him up to the castle, and they kind of look around. There's like a carving of a monster, and it's called the Tirataka. I don't remember if it's also revealed here, but it's told at some point that Sereno also used to be a Sith world. The world used to be ruled by the Sith, and they used this dragon to fight the commoners. Eventually, they rose up and fought them back, and the Tirataka became trapped underneath the world. Of course, we have an issue because Dooku's here, so there has to be some MacGuffin, and the whole castle collapses when he becomes entranced by the carving of the Tirataka, and he hears its roar. But the castle gets brought down. He, I think, breaks his leg, and they get trapped. The Jedi come and free them. Master Yoda helps move all the rubble away, and the father of our little girl reveals himself to be the ruler of Sereno, Count Gora. And we also are revealed that Dooku not only is a Serenian, but he is Count Gora's son. And so, by extension, that girl, Genza, her brother. Count Gora really hates Dooku, and they are told never to come back, and so they go home. But after this meeting, Genza and Dooku have a bond and continue to communicate through the years secretly. Back on Coruscant, Dooku, of course, he is the best, and he continues to prove that he is the best. At one point, him and Sifo Dyas got to get in some Harry Potter mischief, because again, this is basically a Harry Potter copy for this first good chunk of the book, and they sneak into a secret part of the archives, also, like Harry Potter, and they find a bunch of hidden away Sith artifacts. Dooku, again, has some sort of connection with him, similar to how he did with the Tirataka carving, and flips out and force pushes it all away, and gets caught, of course, by the Jedi Council, and we meet Lean Castana, who will become a pretty big role in this book, audio play, whatever. She is a Jedi that doesn't always see eye to eye with the Council, and she's been tracking down these artifacts to keep them away from the rest of the world and store them in this archive. Dooku becomes fascinated with her and wants her to hopefully take him as her apprentice later down the road. So eventually they come to their day where they'll be revealed who becomes their masters. Of course, we know that it was not Castana that was Dooku's master, but it was Master Yoda. He becomes very upset that this happened, not only because he wanted Master Castana, but because Sifo Dyas' friend becomes Master Castana's apprentice. I'm going to try and not hit every beat because I don't think you need it. But he becomes the best there ever was, more or less. He takes 2 Padawans, actually. Before he takes Qui-Gon, he takes Rael, who's a deep southern cowboy who talks like this. I don't really know why that was necessary, but that's how it comes off in the audiobook. Rael and Dooku, I would say, are quite opposite of each other. But here's some cool things I wrote down that I think we should take note of. So, like I said earlier, Castana and Yoda and the Council don't really see eye to eye. And you see the hubris of the Council that leads to their demise later on and the fall of the Order. She wants to try and keep these artifacts away from everyone. They don't want to deal with it. They just kind of want to stay isolated in their own world, which, that bubble's going to pop pretty soon with the Clone Wars. Another thing, Yoda says only to darkness prophecies lead, which is strange because you have a Chosen One prophecy. I guess, yeah. Here's something. Star Wars novels and stuff like that love to kind of jab you in the ribs, hey, remember that thing? I'm reading the Thrawn book right now, and hopefully we'll talk about that next week. I'm about halfway through right now. But they'll be like, hey, Thrawn, you might look good in white, because we all know Thrawn wears a white coat later on. Or, yeah, they're just like, hey, reader, here's an inside joke. The characters don't get it right now, but you're gonna get it, and they do that incessantly. Yeah, so only the darkness prophecies lead, Yoda says. Well, yeah, there's a Chosen One prophecy, and that leads to the darkness because he becomes Darth Vader. But, I thought it was an interesting thing because you learn throughout the book that Sifo Dyas has precognitive abilities, but it takes over him and consumes him. Another thing that comes off of that is there's a rumor of them sending Jedi to the Citadel, Jedi that have the ability of foresight. And the Citadel is more or less a prison for the Jedi run by the Jedi. You see it in an episode or 2 of Clone Wars, but it's been taken over by the Separatists, and you don't actually see it for its true purpose. So rather than deal with them and help them, they send them away to where they can't affect anyone. So like I said earlier, we learned that Dooku has 2 Padawans. And, Dooku starts out perfect and the best at everything, but he obviously strays from that over time. And it's interesting to see because we know that Qui-Gon Jinn is sort of a free spirit, so to speak, and I feel that Dooku and his alternate views from the Order had that influence on Qui-Gon Jinn and his upbringing, and I definitely should read Master and Apprentice sometime to see how that comes into fruition. I thought it was weird. I feel like there was like sexual tension with a lot of characters, including his own sister at certain points. I don't know if I was reading in things a little bit much, but definitely with, I felt like it with his sister and also Master Castana, who is, probably at least 20-something years plus older than him, so that's kind of awkward. I don't know. I feel like it's just how it was written. I got that at certain points when I definitely should not have. Another cool thing we saw as far as expansion of force powers, Master Kasana has a convor, which is more or less an owl. You can see him in Rebels. She has them as pets, and she teaches Dooku how to use the force to almost warg into them. It's presented as influence them, but he almost sees through its eyes, and he's able to nudge it with the force into the ways he wants it to go. So it seems a little bit more overt control rather than suggestive. And this comes into play later when he rides the Tirataka. At some point, so he has his Malfoy at the beginning in the, Harry Potter-esque section of the book called a Wrath, but Wrath's a failure instead of high and mighty. And we learn that Master Braylon, who sat on the Jedi Council, had been covering up for his failures for years because, in fact, she was his mother. Braylon was a seeker, so she would go off into the galaxy for years at a time and try and find force-sensitive children to bring back to the temple. And at one point, I guess she just went off and had a kid and brought it back as a youngling. And Yoda even said that if she was willing to come to the council, they would help her out, but because she hid it for so long that she was banished. Star Wars New Canon Book Club puts it so well when they're talking about the imperfections of the Jedi Order and how it leads it to fall. It's something I kind of got through this book. I would relate it to communism. I don't want to get political, but hear me out. So, in a perfect world, communism could work and could work well. But it's the fact that there are human influences in the humanity and, humans aren't perfect, so it doesn't end up being perfect and it fails. I feel like that's the same way with the Jedi Order and its teachings. Having no attachments is fine as if everyone's perfect. But if someone starts to fail, that's when you have issues. You had Master Braylon, who had a kid and had issues and got kicked out. And then you had Dooku, he connected with his sister and had feelings there. Again, I'm going to steer away from the fact that it kind of came off as romantic at times, but he had, deep feelings for her, and that led him astray, and what led, I think, to his leaving the Jedi Order. And I think it's pretty overt. That model of having no attachments is fine if everyone can uphold to it, but when you have people that fail, then you have problems. It sounds obvious, but there are other ways that could go about it, and I would be interested to see if we get a post-Rise of Skywalker Jedi Order that leans more into allowing attachments similar to the old canon. We see the introduction of Palpatine and Dooku. At a certain point, Dooku tries to reach the Senate and lobby for the funding of a larger defense force, but that gets shut down, and shortly after, Sereno gets invaded by pirates. Dooku feels miffed that he tried to help them almost indirectly by getting this force, and that didn't happen. And when this invasion happens, the Jedi won't even help because they aren't trying to get involved, and Sereno has failed to pay dues to the Republic and has withdrawn diplomats, so there's nothing that they can do. Dooku goes rogue with Sifo Dyas and Master Kasana, and they go and take care of it themselves. At the end of the day, it turns out that his evil brother, which I don't think I've mentioned up to this point, had taken over the planet with the pirates, and he killed his brother, unleashed this Tirataka monster. The monster killed the pirates, and he killed the monster because it was getting out of control. At this point, the next heir would probably be his sister, because he's a Jedi, but they see that there is a rare ore that the monster brought to the surface that they can mine and export and bring Sereno back into a stable financial place. So rather than going back as a Jedi, he renounces his Jedi ties and becomes the Count of Sereno to bring it to a new level in the galaxy. You start to see why he would be a separatist. All this feeds into why he would have a distrust in the Republic and the Jedi, and what led to his position when we meet him first in Attack of the Clones. Overall, I thought it was a really good audio drama, and I'm glad I listened to it. I would recommend it definitely. And yeah, that's about all I had on it. Hopefully you like this more than the kind of really deep blow-by-blow plot recap I've been doing of the comic books. Although I need to definitely take better notes next time so I'm not jumping all over the place. Anyways, like I said earlier, hopefully we will talk about Thrawn next week as well as Project Luminous news. If not next week, then the following for that one. Again, I'll share out my cameo on this podcast, so I would really appreciate it if you listen to that as well. Although their audience is magnitudes larger than mine, so it's not like I'm going to be really cross-promoting that much. Anyways, thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you had a great week in Star Wars. Thanks to Graham Bull for providing our music, as always, and may the Force be with you.